Nerders. Sorry you've had to wait so ridiculously long. I am making a bundle of videos and saving them so you won't have to wait this long again. I apologize. Let's get to it. I think we should start with the Keddie Murders. They're a little bit more recent than what we normally talk about, but it's so bizarre, I think it's worth talking about. The Keddie Murders are an unsolved quadruple homicide that occurred over the night of April 11th to 12th in Keddie, California. The victims were Gianna, that's how I'm pronouncing it, Gienna, Gianna Susan Sue Sharp, her daughter, Tina Louise Sharp, and son, John Stephen Sharp, and John's friend, Dana Wingate. Okay. So in July 1979, Glenna Sue Sharp, along with her 5 children, left their home in Connecticut after separating from her husband, James Sharp. They relocated to Northern California, where Sue's brother, Don, lived. Now, when they arrived in California, she rented a small trailer that used to belong to her brother in this little bitty village in Quincy. It's the Claremont Trailer Village, in Quincy. The following fall, she moved to house number 28 in can't spit it out, a rural town in Sierra Nevada named Kenny. Good grief. Now, can't you see that being the name of a horror movie, right? Number 28, Cabin 28. Okay, so anyway, the house was a lot bigger than the trailer, and it had become available when Plumas County Sheriff Sylvester Douglas Thomas vacated the property. She lived there with her 15-year-old son, her 14-year-old daughter, the son was John, 14-year-old daughter Sheila, 12-year-old daughter Tina, and 2 younger sons, Rick and Greg. I said John was 15, Sheila's 14, Tina was 12, Rick was 10, and Greg was 5. On April 11th, 1981, allergies are horrible right now. South Carolina, woo! Around 11:30 in the morning, Sue, Sheila, and Greg drove from a friend's house, the Meeks family, to go pick up Rick, who was attending baseball tryouts at, in Quincy. They happened upon John and his friend Dana Hall Wingate hitchhiking at the mouth of the canyon from Quincy to Keddie, and then drove them about 6 miles to Keddie. So keep in mind, early 80s, 70s, 60s, etc., hitchhiking was not that weird. Like today, we would totally freak out, but not then. So she's like, oh, look, it's my son and his friend just casually hitchhiking. So I'm going to pick them up and give them a ride. 2 hours later, around 3:30 p.m., John and Dana hitchhiked back to Quincy, where it's thought they may have had plans to visit friends. They were seen in that downtown area. Anyway, that same evening, Sheila has plans to spend the night with the Seabold family, who lived in 27. So it's 28 and 27, and I believe that these homes are like adjacent to each other. Sue stayed home with Rick and Greg and the boys' friend, Justin Smart. Sheila left the house little after 8 p.m. to sleep over at the Seabolds. Tina, who had been watching TV at the Seabolds, came back to 28 after asking what time it was, around 9:30, according to reports. So apparently it was getting late and she wanted to head home. And now, at approximately 10 a.m. on the morning of the 12th, I know, it's a little convoluted. Sheila returns to 28 and discovers the bodies of Sue, John, and Dana in the house's living room. All three had been bound with medical tape and electrical cords. Tina wasn't there while the younger children, Rick, Greg, and Justin, were found completely unharmed in the adjacent room. Bizarre, right? Did nobody hear anything? Upon discovering the scene, Sheila rushes back to the Seabolt's house. And Jamie Seabolt went and got Rick, Greg, and Justin through the bedroom window. Later, he admitted to entering the home, though briefly, through the back door to see if anybody was still alive, and potentially contaminating evidence in the process. The murders of Sue, John, and Dana were especially vicious. 2 bloodied knives and 1 hammer were found at the scene. Blood spatter evidence from inside the house indicated that the murders had all taken place in this living room. Sue was discovered lying in her side near the living room sofa, nude from the waist down, and gagged with a blue bandana and her own underwear, which had been secured with tape. She had been stabbed in the chest, and her throat was stabbed horizontally. Stabbed in the throat so viciously, it had passed through the larynx and nicked her spine. On the side of her head was an imprint matching the butt of a Daisy 880 Powerline BB pellet rifle. It's very specific. John's throat was slashed. Dana had multiple head injuries, had been manually strangled to death. Now that's interesting to me because obviously the whole thing is rage-filled, etc. But if anyone knows anything about true crime, which we do, my nerd friends, strangulation is personal. So why stab and slash the throats of the other 2, but strangle Dana? That's interesting. Both John and Dana had suffered blunt force trauma to the head caused by 1 or more hammers. The autopsies determined that Sue and John died from the knife wounds and blunt force trauma, but Dana died from asphyxiation, from being strangled. Sheila and the Seabolt family, remember Sheila was spending the night in the neighboring home, heard absolutely nothing. A couple in the nearby house, number 16, now they were awakened about 1:15, but by what sounded by muffled screaming. Now that's very interesting to me. You're right in the adjacent house, but number 16 hears muffled screaming. Justin's stepfather, Martin Smart, a neighbor and main suspect, claimed that a claw hammer had inexplicably gone missing from his home. In addition to interviewing the Smarts, detective interviewed numerous other locals and neighbors, several including the members of the Seabolt family. Witnesses recalled seeing a green van parked at the Sharps' house around 9 p.m. Well, you'd think Sheila would have noticed that. She went home. No, not Sheila. Was it Sue? Whoever went home at 9:30 p.m. Justin also offered conflicting stories of the evening and stated he had dreamt details of the murder. In his later account of events, told under hypnosis, he claimed to have seen Sue with 2 men. Based on Justin's descriptions, composite sketches of the 2 unknown men were produced by a man named Embry with apparently 0 artistic ability and no training in forensic sketching whatsoever. It was never explained why. With access to the Justice Department and the FBI's top forensic artists, we're going to bring in clown shoes over here. So, Embry, aka Clown Shoes, Oh, and by the way, law enforcement chose to use this amateur who sometimes volunteered. So was it a money saving thing? I don't know. Anyway, the suspects were described as in their late 20s to early 30s. One stood between 5 feet 11 inches to 6 feet tall with dark blonde hair, and the other between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 10 inches with black greased hair and gold framed sunglasses. And of course, remember the 80s? Well, some of you might remember the 80s. There was this thing called the Satanic Panic. Everything had to be Satanist, right? Heavy metal music, Satanist. Satanist. Anyway, so rumors regarding the crimes being ritualistic, satanic, or motivated by drug trafficking were dismissed by the Sheriff Doug Thomas, who stated in the week following the murders that neither drug paraphernalia nor illegal drugs were found in the home. Tina's disappearance was initially investigated by the FBI as a possible abduction, although it was reported on April 29th, 1981, that the FBI had backed off the search as the California Department of Justice was doing an adequate job and made the FBI's presence unnecessary. Okay. On April 11th, 1984, the third year anniversary of the murders, a bottle collector discovered the cranium portion of a human skull and part of the mandible at Camp 18 near Feather Falls in neighboring Butte County, about 5 miles from Feather Falls, California. The remains were confirmed by a forensic pathologist to be those of Tina in 1984. Now, I find that interesting. So was she the main target? This is so bizarre. 2 people are stabbed and have their throats slashed. 1 is strangled, and 1 is dragged off, and who knows what was done to them. See what I mean about convoluted? Shortly after announcing the discovery, the Butte County Sheriff's Office receives an anonymous call that identifies the remains as belonging to Tina, but the call was not documented. A tape containing a recording of the call was found at the bottom of an evidence bin at some point in 2013 by a deputy who was assigned to the case. The house in which the murders took place was demolished in 2004. According to a 2016 article published by the Sacramento Bee, Martin Smart had left Keddie and driven to Reno, Nevada shortly after the murders. While he was there, he sent a letter to his wife, Marilyn, ruminating on personal struggles in their marriage, which he concluded by saying, "I've paid the price of your love, and now I've bought it with 4 people's lives." In a 2016 interview, Gamberg stated that the letter was overlooked in the initial investigation. Clown shoes. I'm telling you, this whole thing was just botched from the beginning. And it was never admitted into evidence. He later criticized the quality of the initial investigation, saying, and I quote, "You could take someone just coming out of the academy and they'd have done a better job." Smart also allegedly told his counselor he had murdered Sue and Tina, and he had killed the boys to prevent them from identifying him as they had witnessed the whole thing. John Boubede, Boubede, you be the judge. Another suspect who was in the same neighboring cabin as Smart allegedly had ties to organized crime in Chicago. He died in 1988. On March 24th, 2016, a hammer matching the description of the one Smart claimed to have lost was discovered in a local pond and taken into evidence by the Plumas County Special Investigator, Mike Gamberg. Sheriff Greg Hagwood, who was 16 years old at the time of the murders and knew the Sharp family, said the location that it was found it would have been intentionally put there. It wouldn't have been accidentally misplaced. Gamberg also stated that at the time, 6 potential suspects were being examined. And in 2018, Gamberg said that DNA evidence recovered from a piece of tape at the crime scene matched that of a living suspect. So, this case is still ongoing. Let's hope they can get it right this time.